Here are 5 things about Honda that will blow your mind. Number 1, did you know Honda made V8 engines? This all started back in the 1970s when Honda hired a Formula One engineer from England that goes by the name of John Judd. John Judd is a co-founder of Engine Developments, where he builds and designs engines. Honda liked Judd. They decided to hire him to help them design a new engine for the company's return to Formula 2 racing. The first engine Judd produced was called the Judd AV, a turbocharged 2.65-liter V8 making 740 horsepower and producing 350 foot-pounds of torque. So after having great success with the engine in the 1986 Michigan 500 and finishing top 5, the engine was then used in the 1987 Indianapolis 500, where they were able to pull a second place finish. The Judd AV was used from 1985 all the way to 2002. From 2003 all the way to 2011, the Honda Performance Development Team teamed up with Ilmor Engineering to produce the Honda Indy V8, a 3.5-liter V8 naturally aspirated 32 valves dual overhead cam with an alloy steel crankshaft and forged pistons. This engine had a huge gold intake manifold that nicely complemented the red valve covers. From 2004 all the way to 2006, Honda had to make a 3-liter version of this naturally aspirated V8 to accommodate the IRL rule, which required them to reduce displacement. Then Honda went to its original 3.5-liter from 2007 all the way to 2011. This engine was only made available via lease agreement with Honda, and the total cost for one season would run at $935,000. The 2003 to 2006 engine made 670 horsepower. 2007 all the way to mid-2009 made 650 horsepower. The mid-2009 to the end of the season of 2009, they added the push-to-pass feature, which gave them an additional 20 horsepower. The 2010 all the way to 2011, the push-to-pass button added 40 horsepower instead of 20. So if you're not familiar with Formula One racing, it's a button located on the steering wheel which gives you access to more power for a certain amount of time. For example, in a particular race, you might be only given 200 seconds to use that button. Out of those 200 seconds, you can either use them in 20-second increments to either pass somebody up or to defend your position. But once those 200 seconds expired, you cannot use that button anymore. For anybody thinking that you can't really count these engines because they were not made in production vehicles, well, you're wrong. Honda did make a production vehicle and it came with a V8. And the name of the car was the Honda Crossroad. This all started back in the 90s when SUVs started to become more popular. Honda did not want to produce their own ground-up effort to come up with a new SUV, so they decided to partner up with the British company named Rover. So at the end of their deal, Honda ended up rebadging the Land Rover Discovery. They didn't do anything special to it. They didn't do anything. All they did is change the badges on the Land Rover Discovery. The Honda Crossroad was only available in Japan, and it carried all the same mechanical problems from the Land Rover Discovery. So I can only imagine how happy the Japanese mechanics were every time a Honda Crossroad would come across their service drive. Number 2, Honda developed the first automotive navigation system back in 1981. 14 years before GPS was fully functional, Honda called it the Gyrocater navigation system. The Gyrocater was sold as an option for the 1981 Honda Accord and Acura Vigor for only $2,746, which in today's money will equal to more than $7,000. The Gyrocater was based on inertial navigation technology using a gyroscope and mileage sensors attached to the transmission housing. Honda used a special type of gyroscope that used 2 wires and a stream of circulating helium. When the vehicle would move straight, helium would hit both wires equally, keeping them at the same temperature. So when the vehicle would turn, helium deviated to produce a temperature difference between the 2 wires, and the onboard computer could detect that and translate it into directional information. Using that data plus the mileage data from the sensors attached to the transmission housing, the 16-bit computer calculated the car's position and direction of travel with brief intervals between calculations. Calculations would then store in a data table, enabling the display to enlarge, reduce, and rotate pictures of travel at a touch of a button. That's right, you had to use transparent map overlays because at the time it was impractical for an onboard computer to store all the data needed for digitized maps. When the route of travel reached the edge of a map overlay, the driver or passenger would have to switch between maps. The engineers at Honda designed and built the computer in its operation system. Inertial navigation was not as accurate as GPS, but at least the driver could manually adjust the map's angle and the position of the dot to keep it on the map. Number 3, did you know all Hondas use the same oil filter? It does not matter if you have a Type R or a 2002 Honda Odyssey, they both take the same filter, with the exception of the S2000. Honda had to come up with a better design for the oil filter on the S2000 because of its high revving engine. Honda changed the design on the S2000 oil filter, but the S2000 has the same fitment as a regular Honda oil filter. Even though the S2000 filter looks bigger, it's still the same fitment. So it's pretty much the same oil filter, but with a better design and heavier duty internals. So going back to the regular Honda oil filter, you can find many different variations of this oil filter. There's many different part numbers. It's the same filter, it's just made by a different company. You can find part number 15400 PLMA01, which are pretty hard to come by. That part number is made by Filtech. The same part number but ending in A02, which is the most common one you can find, that oil filter is made by Honeywell. Part number 15400 RTA003. That's considered the JDM oil filter because it's made in Japan. So same thing goes for the S2000. I think right now there's 2 variations of that oil filter. Pretty much it's just made by a different company. So yeah, if you find that oil filter and it has a different part number, all it is different company making the oil filter for Honda, since Honda does not make their own oil filters. If you're enjoying the video so far and are blown away by these facts, please make sure to hit the like button. That will help me out a lot. Number 4, the 1988 Honda Prelude was the first vehicle sold in the US with 4-wheel steering. As automobiles started to become more popular in the 1960s, it then backlashed in the 1970s. As problems like environmental pollution and traffic congestion, which increased the number of accidents, began to emerge, the ESV Experimental Vehicle Safety Program, led by a US agency, was an effort to help solve these problems. The ESV's main objective was to conduct a fundamental review on automobile safety with the intention of lowering the rising tide of traffic accidents. Honda decided to participate in this program, and this is where their research in vehicle safety began. Honda's research was aimed towards developing responsive vehicles that could quickly avoid obstacles and, when necessary, come to a quick, complete stop. At the end of 1977, Honda held a brainstorming session, and it was in this brainstorming session when Honda came up with the idea of 4-wheel steering. But Nissan introduced 4-wheel steering in their 1985 R31 Skyline before Honda launched it in 1987. Just weeks after the Prelude launched, Mazda then introduced it. Then in the late 1987, it was Mitsubishi, and last but not least, in 1989, it was Toyota. But Honda took it a step further and brought the 4-wheel steering into the US market. If you look underneath the 1988 Honda Prelude 4-wheel steering system, you will see what looks like a drag shaft running to what looks like a rear differential, going to what looks like half shaft. To say the least, the Honda Prelude 4-wheel steering system looked like a Each manufacturer had their own take on 4-wheel steering, and this is how Honda's 4-wheel steering works. The rear wheels were turned in the same direction as the front wheels when you would turn the steering wheel 140 degrees. This helped in handling at higher speeds. Turn the steering wheel past those 140 degrees, the rear wheels were gradually turned straight once reached 246 degrees. Turn the steering wheel past those 246 degrees, the rear wheels were then turned in the opposite direction from the front wheels. This helped in turning at lower speeds, for example, when you were parked or when you needed to make a U-turn. This system was so complex if you wanted the Prelude with 4-wheel steering, it will cost you an additional $1,300, which in today's money will equal about $3,000. According to skeptics, it was difficult to tell the difference between 2-wheel steering and 4-wheel steering in everyday driving. The only time you can really tell the difference is when it came down to parking. Number 5. Honda is one of the biggest exporter of soybeans. Most people think of Honda as a motor manufacturing company, but Honda has grown into other areas. When Honda first started its operations in Ohio in the early 1980s, all of their parts were coming in shipping containers from Japan. Honda had to send those shipping containers back to Japan for more parts, but Honda did not want to send them back empty. From that came Honda's soybean processing company called Harmony Agriculture Products. Honda got its start in the soybean business after a chance meeting at an airport between a company executive named Hitoshi Morimoto and a Japanese soybean supplier who was looking to expand exports of American soybeans to Japan. There are several reasons for this. One, it's unlimited in the state of Ohio, and there's a market for it in Japan since they don't have the production acres to meet their demand. Honda also wanted to invest in the state in which they operated. See, soybeans are a high source of protein and a good substitute for meat, something desired by Honda's Japanese customers. Maybe this can explain why Honda decided to use soy-based wiring covers for the engine wiring harnesses. If you didn't know, Honda tried to go green or cheap by making a soy-based wiring covers, which is good for the earth when you have to recycle them, but it attracted rodents and they love to chew on it. Repairs are really costly and Honda will not cover them under warranty. As a result, Honda made a chili-infused rodent tape used to deter rodents from chewing on the wires. But to be fair, Honda was not the only automaker using a soy-based wiring cover for their wiring harnesses. Those were my 5 things about Honda that will blow your mind. Let me know if you already knew all these 5 things. And if you did already know all these 5 things, then you must be a diehard Honda fan. And I bow down to you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.